And then one night I was driving home, and I guess I'd been up 5 to 7 days, somewhere's in there. I don't know exactly anymore, but
I got
I started
Jesus
hallucinating,
in
seeing
my
things running
mind.
across the road.
In this world I live, thought I'm on my way to glory.
All right, Mark. Do you want to just tell
I
us a
got
little bit about
Jesus
yourself as a
in
kid?
my
I grew up on the Apache Indian Reservation in Vilas, Arizona. My dad's was a pastor there, and we were there until through my seventh grade year. We moved to Kingman in my eighth grade year. I grew up, it was a different time, and different way of life. I mean, we would go out and we go down to the river with friends, ride our bikes to the convenience store. It was pretty relaxed, and it was a real nice upbringing. I have no complaints.
Now, in resilient recovery, we're talking about drug and alcohol addiction. So, was that a factor either in your family or in the community that you grew up in?
Oh no, there was a lot of alcoholism on the reservation, but you know, it was mostly the adults. Like I said, I was pretty young when we left. I was in seventh grade, so I never got into anything drug wise or anything. I don't regret living on the Indian reservation. It was a positive impact on my life. There's nothing that I can say bad about being there. So,
So, how did you get first introduced to drugs and alcohol? What was that like?
well, my first time of ever using any illicit drug was would have been in college, my freshman year in college, and I worked at a packaging plant where we packaged little things. And a friend of mine w- had a car, and we would drive back and forth. And one day we were driving back, and he said, "Hey, that's a pot plant." So we stopped and we picked some buds off the plant, and we smoked it. And that was the first time I ever used any types of drugs. And I got walked into the dormitory, and the RA smelled it on me, and went to, I had to go to a psychiatrist, whatever it was, for the school and everything. And they asked me about it and everything. But that was my first time with it, and I really didn't like it. I didn't feel high at all, and I got 16 weeks of probation for using it. But I didn't really drink. I drank. I guess I did drink quite a bit in college, but it was more to be sociable with all my buddies who were drinking. So, but I got drunk. I think I can count on my hand twice when I was in college. But I never drank heavily, and alcohol always affected me in a way that instead of bringing me up, I would shut down, get quiet, and just sit there and not do anything. So it was never really appealing to me. And I quit college. It just wasn't for me. I went into the working world, and uh, I started installing insulation and stuff in attics, and made really decent money at the time. And you know, it was all good. I mean, I didn't have a drug problem or anything else like that. And I moved here to Phoenix, and got a job with a cabinet firm, building cabinets and installing cabinets. And that was where I started using drugs, hard drugs.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about how did that start? How did you go from not really using or using substances to to even just starting and experimenting with it?
Yeah, the company I worked for was so busy at the time, and we were working 7 days a week, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it was a lot of work. And I noticed all my buddies were leave work and they would go out and party, and I was going home and going to bed so I could get up the next morning and go to work. And I was like, how can they do this? I mean, it never made sense to me how they could do it. And one of the guys up in the main office was a pretty good friend of mine, and he came over one night. It was a Friday night, and he came over, and he said, "Hey, we're all going to the bar. You want to come with us?" I'm like, "I'm so tired, and we got to work in the morning and everything." And he didn't say anything. He just put a line of methamphetamines on the table, and he said, "Here, try this, and it'll, you'll be able to go out and party with us and go to work tomorrow morning, and you won't have any problems." I'm like, no, I can't do that. And it sat there for an hour, and then they were getting ready to go, and I just couldn't bear the thought of not being able to go out and hang out with buddies and stuff. And I did the line, went with them, and the rest is history. I mean, it became a part of my life to be able to go out and socialize with people and do other things with people, and be able to continue working and make a living.
Now, you said it kind of took off from there. Was there, did it start out slowly? Did it immediately jump up to something that was, happening on a daily basis, or?
It kind of went right to every day. I mean, the first time I did it, went out and partied, went to work, came home, crashed, overslept, didn't make it to work on time, was 4 hours late to work. And, that was like the first time I'd ever been late to work. And, so I just said, "Hey, how can I get some more of this?" And it became a every night thing. And it was just one, the amount that I used started out, just one line a night. But after 2 or 3 months, then it became a lot more. And then it started snowballing out of control, where I went without power once for 2 weeks because, I had to, I wanted to party and work, and and the only way to do that was to keep buying meth, and then my lights were out for 2 weeks. So
You made a decision.
I made a decision.
Electricity or
Right.
meth and work?
Right.
Okay. So, when did you first start to notice that there were some problems with it? I think initially it kind of solved a problem for you.
Right.
That it made it possible for you to work and go out and have a social life in this really busy work environment. Was that time that you were late for work, was that when you first started to notice it, or?
Well, that would be that was the first indicator that there was a problem, but I didn't realize it as a problem. I saw it as a solution to what I wanted to do. I mean, it wasn't at that point in time in my life, it wasn't, it was, this will help me do what I want to do. And, I'm not feeling bad. I feel good. I'm working, I'm able to party with my friends and stuff like that. And it was never like, yeah, this is bad for me. And it went, when I started noticing it was bad was when I'd get home from work, and rather than go to sleep, I would sit at home and start using just by myself, and that just led to all other kinds of problems. So, but that was 2 or 3 years into using. And then one night I was driving home, and I guess I'd been up 5 to 7 days, somewhere's in there. I don't know exactly anymore, but I started hallucinating, seeing things running across the road. It happened to be the night that the Phoenix lights were in the sky. And after seeing all the stuff in the road and the Phoenix lights, I'm like, I just missed everything as, I'm hallucinating and everything. And a couple weeks later, that's when I knew I didn't really want to do meth anymore. And I went to, it was a couple weeks later on a Friday or a Saturday night. I'm not sure exactly what it was. I went out with a bunch of friends, and, I just wanted to hang out and drink some beers and be mellow. And they all wanted to get high. So they went out and bought an 8-ball and split it 4 ways. And I was so irritated and upset at that time that I put my whole quarter in a line and I snorted the whole thing in one shot. And that was a lot. I mean, I all of a sudden, within 15, 20 minutes, I felt my heart just pounding away. I was sweating. It was winter time, and I couldn't sit still. I felt like I was going to jump out of my skin. And I just started walking around the mobile home, and I must have made 400 laps before I calmed down. And that's when I decided that methamphetamines wasn't for me anymore. And I started looking into what other drugs I could take to be able to still work and everything. And that's when I started using crack cocaine. And I completely shut down. I mean, went completely off of methamphetamine, and went directly to crack cocaine. I was smoking it, snorting it. I never shot it up or anything. So
that's interesting because a lot of people kind of do 2 or 3 drugs. They just sort of do drugs,
right.
And you had one drug that kind of solved a problem for you,
right.
And when it stopped being helpful, or they had too many drawbacks, you moved to something else. You still wanted that problem solved.
Right. I still wanted to be able to work and hang out with my buddies and party. So the thing with the crack cocaine is meth lasts a long time and crack cocaine lasts a long time, but you don't know it lasts a long time. You get that initial buzz or whatever you want to call it. I mean, you can compare it to having an orgasm that you feel and then it goes away, but you're still high. So you're always using more, and you can't do it in public when you're smoking. So once you start on crack cocaine, all of a sudden you're not out in public anymore. You're burying yourself in your house, and you stop socializing with people, and you don't realize that it's changed your life that much. I mean, it takes that much control over you. So
yeah, it's kind of a theme that sometimes at the moment you're not even realizing what's happening.
Right.
I think that's interesting. You talked about a couple of differences between crack and methamphetamine. How quickly it comes on, and how long it lasts, and one being more you can do out in public, one you get more isolated.
Right.
Was there anything else that you noticed in terms of a difference between the two? They're both stimulants. Is there anything that you noticed?
Right. When I was smoking crack, I thought I felt better than I did when I was using methamphetamine. So, but with cocaine, it's like I said, it's more like, the orgasmic feeling compared to methamphetamines was just a burst of energy, so those were the 2 biggest differences. But as far as my life changing, I went from being out all the time to going to work. Couldn't wait to get off of work because I wanted to go home and smoke crack, and that was just, I did that for about 1.5 years before I decided that, what, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You grew up in the church.
Yep.
Dad's a pastor.
Yep.
What was going on with you and the church and religion?
Well, at that point in time, and this started a little bit before I started using, but I was at one of our Wells churches, and it was so the same every Sunday. And one day I was sitting in church and I stood up because everybody stood up. I recited all the stuff that everybody recited. I sat down, I sang the hymns. I didn't open my hymnal. I've been in the church for 20 whatever years it was. So, most of it's ingrained in my head as memory. And I'm going, you know what, this is wrong. I mean, I'm just here. I'm not really participating. I'm just being here because that's what's expected of me. And I quit church for 12 years. It was probably a year. And I would say that probably quitting church was probably one of the things that didn't deter me from using drugs, because I was no longer praying and doing anything else like that. There was no God that I was thinking of saying, what, he doesn't want me to do this. So that was a big part of it, I'm sure.
So you gave up on kind of the formal aspect of going to church and
Yes.
The ritual and all of that, but also you weren't praying. You didn't really feel like God was a presence in your life.
No, actually, at that point in time, there were nights that I would go to bed and feel empty and alone, and it was a very dark place. Not having God in your life. I mean, it was. There were nights that you just felt that you were just there, and there was nobody else around, and it was an odd, awful feeling. So I mean, I had friends around me and everything, but still, you just feel so alone when you lay down in bed. You just felt so alone. There was no comfort, no this, no that. There wasn't a feeling of I'm bad or I'm good. It was just, there was no feeling at all, and no presence of anything that was good around you. So, yeah, so those were some dark times.
Yeah, not racked with guilt, but just feeling almost like cosmically alone.
Yeah.
There's just no point, or there's.
Yeah, well, I don't say, not to say that there wasn't a point, but I always strive to try and make my life better, but it just seemed there was no help, no guidance, no path. It was just you do what you got to do to try and make life as happy as you can. I mean, and when life's not happy, you just feel alone.
Yeah. That's a very profound sense of aloneness.
Yeah.
No guidance. No. Yeah. So when did you start to think about quitting?
Well, I had it was probably a year and a half into it, and I was living with people who also smoked, and they used all kinds of drugs. I mean, I was one drug at a time, but I lived with people who used, and they'd shoot up heroin, shoot up meth, smoke crack, and I guess I noticed, we would sit there and I would watch people picking at the floor looking for pieces that had dropped. And I'm going, man, this is just crazy. I hope I don't ever get to that point in my life. And I think that was the start of it. I had popcorn ceilings, and when everybody would leave the room to go do whatever they were going to do, I just scrape my hand across the popcorn ceiling, and it would fall in the carpet, and people would come back and they'd start picking in the carpet. And I just got a kick out of watching them do that. But I mean, I didn't ever want to get to that point in my life. So that was part of the start. And, it was very expensive. I stopped hunting, I stopped fishing, I stopped doing the things I enjoyed doing. And I wanted to get back to doing those. I mean, it just, what it took away a lot of things that I really enjoyed doing. And you don't see them at the time when you're doing them because the feeling overpowered. I mean, it just takes away, it takes away your thoughts and stuff. I mean, it's really hard to explain, but it does, it takes away your life. And it takes a while for you to realize that. And I don't know, some people don't ever realize it, or they do and they can't find their way out. So
how did you try and quit a few times? Was there like one time and it worked?
no, it was a one time and it worked. I got to a point where I said I'm done, and my dad ran a Good Shepherd Bible Camp, and I called them, and I didn't tell them what was going on or anything, and they didn't find out until a couple years later what I had been done. But I called my dad and said, hey, I would like to come to camp, and I quit my job and went to camp and fought through camp, and I met my then wife at camp there, and we dated and then got married. And but after camp, I went to my parents' house and I laid on the floor for a week and a half, just detoxing. And they thought I was sick and everything. So that was a really bad time. I felt like I couldn't move. I had absolutely no energy. I mean, that is a horrible thing to go through. So, but once I did that, I headed back to Phoenix, and I applied for a job, and I got it. Got promoted to superintendent my second day. So, and I never looked back from there. And I did have times when I thought, man, I sure would like to do it. And one of the things that in my mind that helped me get past all that is, I said, you know what? When I'm old and retired, I'm going to go back to this stuff. And that gave me in my brain, it gave me a thing to say, I haven't quit. I'm just getting my life straight, going to do the things I want to do. And then when I retire, I can go back, because it's not going to hurt anybody. So
what would that have meant if you told yourself, at the beginning, I'm never ever doing this again, done, it's just never going to happen?
I don't know that I could have done that. I really don't. I mean, in my life, the whole thing, I got to take things and, like eating, I've lost 100 pounds over the last couple of years, and it was a slow change. I tried those diets where I'd lose weight, but I just tried, I'd used to go and eat several burgers, and then I'd still buy the several burgers, but I'd cut one in half and toss out half the burger and eat 2.5 burgers instead of 3 burgers. And then I started buying vegetables at the grocery store and had one healthy meal a week, and then turned into 2. And it took a really long time for it to stick. And the same thing with in my head with the drugs, I couldn't just say I'm done. I mean, cigarettes, when I quit smoking, it was from 2 packs a day down to 1 cigarette a day, and I just slowly cut it out. So for me, I had to find a way that said I haven't quit. I can still do it, and eventually, if you do it long enough and follow your plans, it works.
I'm curious, when you're essentially detoxing by yourself on a floor, that's a point at which a lot of people book it, back to their friends, back to their dealers, whatever. This is a terrible experience. I hate how I feel. I'm just gonna use again,
Right.
Because of how bad this feels.
Right.
What kept you from jumping?
That's why I went to my parents' house. It was because if it got worse to it, I would tell them what was going on. But I knew I could just lay there and do nothing, and they would think I was sick. So, you know, but if I would have gone to anywhere else, a friend's house or whatever, I would have bailed. I had to go somewheres where I knew that things were going to be okay. And, you know, I couldn't be around anybody who I knew that used. I couldn't be close to them. I had to be a whole state away in order for this to take effect. So.
Okay, so you were in another state.
Yeah, I was in California. I lived in Arizona. My parents were in California at the time. So.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you really took yourself
I had to
out of the
remove
situation.
myself, and then when I came home, I didn't. You know, I cut ties with everybody who I changed phone numbers. I moved. Nobody knew where I was. So I mean, it was tough. You know, back then I thought they were good friends, and now, you know, I mean, they're acquaintances, and I hope they're doing well in life, and you know, so.
At the time, though, it was like giving up this amazing feeling,
Right.
getting high,
And
my buddies.
and your friends, and yeah.
So I think the other time, so people a lot of times will bolt when they're detoxing.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is once they leave the safety of the rehab that they're at or whatever, and they get back into the real world, temptation strikes. You mentioned that you just kind of deleted people's phone numbers and didn't
Right.
contact them.
Yep.
Anything else that helped you get back into life where maybe it's more, you have more access potentially if you had sought it out? How did you make sure that you stayed sober? In that?
A lot of it had to do with my job, and I was going through a really hard time in my marriage at that time too. So to get through that part and not use again was it's a miracle. I mean, you know, by the grace of God. But I still wasn't at church at that time yet. The job I took on was I applied for installing cabinet job, and I went and interviewed with the owner of the company, and he hired me on the spot, and he told me to come in the morning and meet with the superintendent. And the superintendent came to me and said, I quit yesterday. You got 2 weeks to learn everything I know. You're the new superintendent. And that made me feel so good that, and then, you know, they were Jewish by faith, but I mean, they were really nice, supportive people. I mean, they really looked out for me. They watched my kids because I was having a hard time with marriage at the time, and they would watch my kids, and I mean, it was just great, and I didn't want to disappoint anybody anymore. So, you know, I stuck it out, and my marriage got real bad, and that's when I met Pastor Jeff, and Pastor Jeff said, well, I'm starting a church. Why don't you come join, and we'll counsel once a week, and we did, and you know, I counseled with Jeff for 7 years, and you know, tried to fix my marriage, and it can only be done when two people do it. It can't be done just one-sided. And Jeff finally said that, you know, you have to be able to say that you've done everything you can before you get a divorce. And one day I said, you know what, Jeff, I've done everything I can, and I just can't do it anymore. So, but Jeff was a big part of filling that space and bringing me back to God that helped me not to use again. So.
Yeah, can you talk about that a little bit? How did meeting him, how did getting reconnected with a church, how did that help?
Well, I mean, first of all, I didn't feel. I mean, even when I was married, there were times I'd lay down in bed and go, you know, just have this blah feeling, you know, there's nobody here, and everything like that. And you know, Jeff, talking with Jeff, he just made all my sins seem to be not okay, but that they're forgiven, and it doesn't mean the end of the world. You can move on, make new lives, and do new things. Yeah, he became a really good friend. So somebody I could tell anything to. So
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like there was something about that also gave you maybe some hope that it wasn't just this bleak aloneness.
right, he gave me a lot of hope and stuff. Trying to resolve my marriage. And like I said, I did my part and tried real hard, and I'm really against divorce. I thought I'd never get divorced, and just he helped me see that even though I've done a lot of things wrong, I can still be a good Christian and have a fulfilling life. It wasn't the end of the world and everything else. I mean, there were, you just keep living.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, for sure. So, you're somebody that quit on your own.
yep,
You stayed sober on your own for years,
yes.
over a decade. And so what was it about Resilient that interested you or made you think, I know I have never been to an AA meeting, I haven't gone to rehab, but I'm going to go ahead and go to this.
Right. And, it was, at first I thought, wow, I could help people. It was more of I started out as a selfish reason. I did this on my own, and really it wasn't on my own. But at the time I was thinking, I have all these secrets how you can quit and everything. And it was more of a selfish reason that I started coming. But I was having problems with my daughter, and, you were having problems with your daughter. So all of a sudden it became a great place to air out my problems and help out. You helped me and I helped you and stuff like that. It just was. It turned into a really great thing from what it changed completely from what I thought it was going to be. I mean, everybody has their own way to recover. Some are through homes, and some are through, they got to go through drug, treatment centers. Yeah, jail. There's, everybody's different, and that's a big thing that I see now. So, but yeah, resilience been, I love this. It's a great Bible study, along with being able to talk with people who have the same things that you went through and understand, and don't judge you. Not that I really have a problem with people judging me. I just don't like to disappoint people. So, whether they judge me or not is fine. But disappointment, I don't like to disappoint people. So,
What would you say to somebody who, was considering coming to Resilient?
I would tell them that, I think they should at least try it once and, see, it's a comfortable place. There's no pressure. It's Bible based, and that might turn off some people, but I think it's a positive thing that once they come once, they can see where the power of the Word of God and being with other Christians who have the same issues that you have can be together and talk about things. It's just really comfortable here.
I know at one point you thought, you mentioned this earlier, wow, once I retire, I'm just going to go back and use, right?
Right.
What's changed? What about the way you think about going? What would happen?
I can't tell you when it changed or why it changed, but all of a sudden there's, a couple, it's probably 4 or 5 years now, that I said to myself, I was thinking about it, I thought to myself, I will never touch this stuff again. It was not fun. Everything I thought was fun. Looking back, it was not fun. I was not healthy. It just, all of a sudden one day it was like, you know what? You did it, forget it, move on. But I have no desire. I mean, all the things I've been through, and some people say I'm cursed because some of the things that go wrong in my life, but I have never wanted to try it again or do it again. I mean, I have no desire anymore, and I can't explain why.
Yeah, I just think it's so interesting that it was like this thing that you liked so much at one point.
Right.
You're like, I can't say never, because then it would be hard to stop.
Right.
It's just this, it's like this ideal in my mind. And it goes from this ideal in my mind, this like secret thing I'll go back to when I retire.
Right.
To, I totally hate it.
Yeah.
Just a complete 180 in your thoughts about it.
I just can't explain it, but yeah, it's hypocritical. I mean, in a sense it is. I mean, I didn't want to say I was done, but now I'll say, now I'm saying I'll never do it again. And that's kind of like a hypocritical thing to say I'll never do it again. But I actually truly believe this deep in my heart that I'll never do it again.
Yeah, maybe the new man is stronger now.
Yeah, and God has a lot to do with it.
Yeah,
so, crosswalk is my home.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Very cool. Anything else that you wanted to share that we didn't really get a chance to touch on?
I think we're pretty good there. So, yeah.
Cool. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I just really appreciate Mark sharing his story. We talked about this a little bit afterwards, and it was not a decision he took lightly. At the same time, it became a decision that he felt no ambivalence about either. That after thinking about it, praying on it, he finally decided that he not only wanted to share his story, but that he was excited about sharing his story. And his hope is that it will help somebody else, that something that he said, something of his experiences will help other people. So I want to thank him because I know it was not a decision he made lightly. And I also want to thank Marc Sontag because, he said earlier in the video that he helped me, I helped him when we had some issues, and I can attest to that. God and Marc Sontag are a big part of the reason that that I'm in recovery now, and that my family life is nothing like what it was 10 years ago. Just appreciate everything about him, his humility, and his it's just straightforward and down to earth, and it's just so easy to talk to him. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed getting to know him and his story. Oh yeah, and click the like button and hit that subscriber bell, and the subscriber button and the subscriber bell, because those things will alert you in the future when we have more content. And it lets the algorithm know to present this to other people that might enjoy it as well. And so we kind of extend our impact when you guys like and subscribe and click the bell.